If you've been struggling with dua, and if you've been making a lot of dua and you've reached this peak, right? So you've made so much dua and you've reached this level in your dua where you've been supplicating for something for so long, and you've been begging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it for so long, but you haven't seen any effect to it, and you reach this quote-unquote peak where you're about to just simply blow up and you're just not feeling yourself and you've had enough of that dua, here's what I want you to know. In that moment where you feel that you've reached the peak of your dua and you haven't seen any changes in your dua for whatever time and duration you've spent praying for that specific thing that you've wanted from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, here's the secret for you to really have a positive understanding and how you at that very critical moment, by doing this one act, will change the course of that dua not being accepted or being prolonged even further to it being accepted and immediately given to you. The Prophet ﷺ says in a hadith from Sahl ibn Sa'd radiallahu anhu, and it's a sahih hadith narrated in Bukhari. The Prophet ﷺ says, وَإِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالْخَوَاتِمِ. Indeed, a'mal, your perception, your idea, your ideation, your perception of events, your perception of dua, your perception of how you see things around you, your actions, your intentions, they are concluded. Listen to this very carefully. They are concluded and they are given an answer based off of that very last moment, that last sensation, that last stage that you showcase of yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through your behavior, through the righteousness of how you will decide to view things positively, not negatively. If you have a righteous outlook on whatever it is that you're seeking, whether it's a dua, whether it's marriage, whether it's an opportunity, the way you feel about it to Allah at that very moment where you feel that you're about to break apart, that is when victory comes to you. And that is what prevents your dua from being prolonged and not answered to it being given to you immediately and bestowing relief onto you right there and then. And brothers and sisters in Islam, this is where so many of us fail. So many of us get this opportunity in life where we're making dua for something for so long and we're wishing that we have it right there and then, but it doesn't happen. And then what kind of discourse do we begin to play in our minds when we've reached the peak? When we've reached the peak after praying for something for so long, just at that final moment, we break apart. We prove hypocrisy of ourselves to Allah. And that's why du'as don't get accepted. That's why you will feel that you've been praying for something so long and you've reached the peak and you're about to just fall apart, and you don't feel like there's any new horizon that is dawned upon you. And the reason being is the following. It's because we've fought for so long, but when it came time to cut the red ribbon, we just simply threw the scissors right behind our backs. And that's why our dua, as a result, gets prolonged, and even worse, it doesn't get accepted. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you at that very peak moment to showcase the best fight for yourself at that moment when it all depends on you, not on Allah's ability subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept or to decline. That's very easy for Allah, but Allah's watching you and He wants you to really give the best fight that you can at that peak moment where you're falling apart and you're about to come to a point where you're going to tell yourself, you know what, screw that dua, I'm not even going to bother making that dua anymore. When you reach that moment where you're about to say that, no, fight that. Allah wants you to put on the best fight by proving, Ya Allah, I'm reaching the peak, I'm about to fall apart, but Ya Allah, wallahi, I will not fall apart, I will not break apart, because that last fight is truly the last fight that I will put on, and it will decide whether or not my dua gets prolonged or gets immediately answered. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy upon us, and may Allah give us the best. Allahumma ameen ya rabbil alameen. If you've been struggling, if you've reached the peak and you're falling apart, this is your secret. Share it with others, put it into effect, and wallahi thumma wallahi, you will come out victorious with your du'as being answered like this right away.